So I wanted to help break down, because that's one of the things I get people saying to me. They're like, hey, so if this flu vaccine is so bad, why does our government buy it? Well, number one, I think I mentioned in a previous live video that you have to understand that our government officials can own stock. They can own basically portions of companies, patents. They can own stock in vaccine makers. So what they do, if they take our taxpayer money and then buy vaccines, the stock of that company will go up, putting money, personal money, into their pockets. So don't steal your taxpayer money. No, they just use your taxpayer money to pay for worthless vaccines. That increases the stock of the drug company they have stock in, which pads their pockets and wallets a little bit. So that's why. Well, beyond that, here's the reality. In the medical profession, the pharmaceutical world, if you understand, they make money on sick people. Please understand that money comes from sick people. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a hater out there that wants to say, well, Dr. Wild Doc person, you make money on sick people because you help people get well, kind of like our testimony. Donna today got up with like 5 different drugs. Somebody's off of Big Pharma's poisons. That's what I do in my office. You know what? I have the worst business model. See, my business model, people come into my office. We do the tests we need to evaluate and figure out what's causing their illness, causing their chronic disease, or we figure out where their health is at that moment in time so they can prevent future illness. And we take care of the causes of illness in the present time, reversing those diseases, those illnesses, getting them well. That's why we call it the wellness way, the Wild Doc way. I lose money on them because the longer they're with me, the healthier they become, as long as they follow my recommendations. There are some people that still eat McDonald's and still come to my office and get adjusted. Thank God they at least do that. But the reality is they still don't listen to all my recommendations. But the reality is they get healthier. They get off their drugs. They need me less often. Meanwhile, why do they want you to get these vaccines? Why would they get you free vaccines? Big Pharma is okay with that. Doctors are okay with it. There are some doing it because they believe, and of course I've got to make sure that I mention to everybody that, not all doctors are harmful. Not all doctors are evil. No, they're not. I agree with that. But the reality is a lot of them are scaredy cats, afraid to go against the medical profession, afraid to go against the norm, against the majority, afraid to speak up and tell the truth. A lot of them are there. And a lot of them just want to make their own money and have a good living and be able to provide for their family, so they're doing it for that reason. And then others love money more than the lives of you and your children. They're okay with you getting sick from their procedures and their vaccines so that you come back to them again as long as you're unknowing of the truth, and the truth is told right here. Share it, don't just like it. That's the way we save lives. They're okay with you not knowing the truth. They're okay with you getting sick from their vaccines, and they know they're making you sick from their vaccines because they know you're going to come back then as your child is more sick, and you're going to ask for their drugs again. And you're going to pay your copay, and then your insurance pays more money for that acute illness visit to the doctors. And then while you're in the waiting room, you're going to spread more acute illnesses to all those other babies and people who are there for their well baby checks, and they're going to make more money on it. Some of them actually understand this. I don't know what percentage of the medical profession knows this, but the reality is I don't understand why the whole profession doesn't know it if they were actually doing what they should be doing and what they're alluding to or making the public believe, which is believe that they actually read research, which ironically they don't. Again, there's research on the fact that doctors don't read research. It's kind of comical. Anyway, so here is why they're okay with free vaccines. Because even if they don't make a whole lot of profit on the vaccine, which they do, but if they don't make tons and tons of money on the vaccine, guess what? Well, according to one of the latest CDC-funded studies, we find out that your child is more likely to get sick. So here we go, the conclusion of the study. And again, I did a video on this going through all the major points that I think should be pointed out. It'll be on YouTube. Subscribe there, Dr. Dale Brown, so you can get the whole breakdown. Because I want you to be so informed and educated that you can be warrior individuals, knowing the truth, going out there, speaking it without fear, in the face of every medical physician that wants to push a vaccine. So if you're walking through Publix, or you're walking through Walgreens, you're walking down the street, somebody says, have you got your flu vaccine today? And you say, no, haven't you read the latest study by the CDC that said children aren't less likely to get the flu and are actually more likely to get sick? Haven't you read that? It's in the journal Vaccine. You didn't read that? You didn't watch the Wild Docs video? Maybe you should. Maybe you should actually read the research before you actually suggest somebody get a vaccine. Anyways, here's the results. The conclusion then of the study, the latest study on the flu vaccine, it says this. Among children, there was an increase. That means it went up. That means it was more. It got worse. So there was an increase in the hazard of acute respiratory illness. ARI is acute respiratory illness. Let's break that down. Sickness, illness, infection. An infection caused by non-influenza respiratory pathogens. Respiratory is your lungs. Pathogens means pathogenic bacteria or viruses or things that make you sick, all right? Post-influenza vaccination. So post is after. So after the vaccine, they had an increase going up more often. You were sick. Your child, at least, compared to unvaccinated. So the unvaccinated are healthier than the vaccinated. Get that? Wow, holy cow. That goes against everything the CDC usually says. But right there we have it. Going on. We did not observe that influenza vaccination significantly reduced overall hazard of influenza in our population. So what this study showed us, it gave us evidence to be able to say in this study, which was 3 seasons, mind you, 3, more than one. See, I have a local health department director who thinks he can sit there and dispel. Well, that's one research study that showed that people who got the flu vaccine were 630%, spreading 630% more virus via breathing, which is the worst way to spread it. It's the most virulent way to spread it. It's the best way for other people to get infected by you. And because of your shedding of the virus, he said, that's one season. That's just one vaccine season. So it may not be the other seasons. I'm sure there's other seasons that say the opposite. Okay, well, maybe so. This was 3. Folks, more sickness and no protection going on. Increased risk of non-influenza respiratory virus infections associated with the receiving an inactivated influenza vaccine, the shot, the injection. Overall, the following 9 months, vaccine recipients, those who got a vaccine, the vaccinated, had an increased risk of virologically confirmed non-influenza infections. What? They're more likely to get sick, folks. Going on, yet another study. Epidemiology of respiratory viral infections in children enrolled in the study. Why are they okay to give out free flu vaccines to our children? Because children are more sick, and those who are truly evil, corrupt, who want money, they're okay with it, because now you're going to come back, all those parents who are unknowing to the truth, because they accepted the vaccine. If they knew this stuff, they wouldn't be like, yeah, I'll pay to get my child sick more often. The study of influenza vaccine effectiveness. Here you go. Influenza-like illness was more common. It means that it's more likely. Children vaccinated against the influenza. So illness was more common in children who were vaccinated. Going on, a 4th study, actually. Effectiveness of the trivalent inactivated flu vaccine, influenza hospitalization. So your child is more likely to go to the hospital. Vaccines did not provide any protection against hospitalization in pediatric subjects, especially children with asthma. On the contrary of what people are told, parents are told, more children ended up in the hospital 3-fold. Why am I getting so worked up and I'm going crazy on this video? Because I want people to understand this. I don't want children in the hospital. And people sadly won't pay attention if I just sat here and just read it. Anyways, folks, there's a bunch of research studies showing you what? It shows us that children are more likely to be in the hospital by 300% increased risk of being in the hospital. They're more likely to get other pathogenic illnesses, if they get the vaccine. So why do you think they're okay with giving out flu vaccines? You know what? If you can make something in bulk and get government funding for it, and you're a for-profit organization, our government gives, so get this, folks, here's how screwed up this whole system is. So our government gives money to vaccine makers to produce vaccines, then our government buys vaccines, then our government helps them sell vaccines, and the government does all the marketing for the vaccines. That's all our taxpayer money does. We haven't even talked about the money that the drug companies have to put into it. Then they put a little bit of money into it. They pay no liability risk, none whatsoever. So the vaccine manufacturer, the manufacturers and factories out this vaccine, that makes all the money on it, receives government funding to help make the vaccine, government money to help research the vaccine, government money to help sell the vaccine. Meanwhile, our politicians make more money as the stock goes up on a government-funded organization that is a for-profit organization. And then the drug company has no liability and financial risk if their vaccine kills you or makes your child sicker. So that's a really good business model, don't you think? Get the government to pay for the majority of the production of one of your for-profit items, give it out there, and even if you got to give a few out for free, that's all good and dandy, right? Because guess what? All these sick children will be coming back to the hospitals, 300% more profits for the hospital. That's what the study said. Look at this, folks. Threefold. That's a 300% increased risk of hospitalizations in subjects who did get the vaccine. 300% more profits just from influenza-like illness because they gave the vaccine to our children. Hospitals are making more money on it. They're okay with pushing it. It doesn't cost them anything. If anything, they get government money to help them push and give the vaccine. And then the drug company who sells Tamiflu and Tylenol, they're sitting there making more profits because people are more sick, and it was the people that didn't know the truth, so they're willing to go back once they're sick, believe the lies of their medical physician and the government and the TV, media, everybody else, and sit there and say, it wasn't the vaccine that made you sick, even though the research actually shows it was. But here we got our Tylenol, which lower your fever so your child gets more sick, and then needs more invasive procedures, then needs to go to the NICU. It might die as a result of you believing moronic advice. All right, folks, I'm just a little fired up. I haven't been fired up this flu season yet. It's the fired up flu season has just started for the Wild Doc.